Democrats just need to admit that they dropped the ball on crime. And it doesn't matter what the statistics are, whether it got lower or higher. Nobody cares. If you feel unsafe, that's all that matters. And I think that Trump understands that and Democrats don't. Sending the National Guard into these 19 different states, this is the scariest thing that I've seen.
Scarier than people being mugged and if I did it in DC and it's working, could I then go and reinforce the law enforcement in these cities, give them a force multiplier, and help bring down the crime in these cities, and show these constituents that they can in fact be safe?
Let me ask you about a bunch of different policies just to kind of get your thinking out there. If city council legislation to abolish the NYPD gang database were to pass, would you support and sign that?
I have supported that proposal. It's one that I've supported because of the vast dragnet has meant the inclusion of New Yorkers on the basis of whether they go out late, photos they put on social media. There's no question that we have to take gangs extremely seriously. And yet I find that a database that includes New Yorkers on such bases is one that doesn't actually do exactly that.
Okay.
Did that idiot really just try to spin a yarn that the folks on the NYPD gang database are really just young folks who like to stay out late and post on social media? You know, this goes back to something I've been hammering home for weeks. You ever notice who the Democrats consider first? It's not the victims or the would-be victims. It's the thugs, the felons, the tweakers, the degenerates like gangbangers, illegals, you know, the overall bad apples of the bunch. Don't want to insult them, don't want to make them uncomfy, don't want to put them in a bad light, while meanwhile it's friggin' lights out for the decent folks who have to put up with this. And for what? For what? If Democrats want to run on crime, coddling it and not fighting it, well, have at it and best of luck. Joining me now with her best attempt at defending this foolishness is trial attorney and former Democratic speechwriter. She's back in Nashville, Madeline Summerville. All right, I got to talk about a couple different things, and they're very similar. Okay, you got Mamdani, who's like, we don't want the NYPD gang database. It sweeps too many people into it. You got to worry about, you know, the thugs and the felons. Like, we wouldn't want to make them seem worse than they are. And then you've also got liberal mainstream media, who for the last 2 days has been more upset that conservatives are highlighting the brutal stabbing of a Ukrainian refugee, more concerned about us highlighting it than they are about the stabbing itself. So you got two things there, and it just goes back to, again, my same question. Why are Democrats so hell-bent on considering perpetrators over victims?
So I actually learned, I think, the answer to this question the last time I was here. And I want to thank you so much for having me back. I thought last episode was awesome.
It was. We had a great discussion.
It was awesome. And I'm very grateful to be back. And so what I learned was, remember that Charlize Theron clip we watched?
Yeah.
Where she was talking about trans people and criticizing America. Well, what I realized was that Democrats haven't done a good enough job of complimenting America and saying positive things about it, to where when we criticize it, conservatives believe that we still love America. And it's kind of like, you know, like the compliment sandwich, or when you discipline a kid or whatever. You can't keep saying all the bad things and none of the good ones, or else they're going to feel like you don't love them.
Right.
So I think that I don't think that Democrats, of course, want crime. I don't think that they want to support the perpetrator over the victim. I think that it comes off that way because they're over here fighting for rights that they're afraid that they're going to lose. And so, yeah.
What rights are that? I mean, this whole cashless bail, these felon coddling policies, when you say Democrats don't like crime, well, the policies they enact would kind of say otherwise, right? If you're saying, oh, we want cashless bail because, you know, some people might be poor, we got to let everyone out, you know, the system is racist, got to just make sure we let everyone out first and then deal with the repercussions later, because it's about feelings, right? So you got cashless bail policies, you've got Soros-backed or otherwise liberal activist DAs that don't want to prosecute crime, right? They want to give people minimum sentences or no sentences at all because it's about getting them out of jail, getting them out of prison. It's all about recuperating, rehabilitating, or otherwise placating people who do bad things. And I'm not saying that there's not an element of criminal justice reform that we can discuss and how we rehabilitate people when they are in the system.
Yeah.
But it doesn't feel like Democrats want anyone to just be in the system at all.
I know. And here is a problem. So the Democrats are afraid of the slippery slope with losing rights, just like the Republicans are afraid of losing their Second Amendment rights. Whenever you come close to taking that right away, it's going to be panic, right? No one ever said that Democrats want to take everyone's guns away. That's never been a thing, right? But people believe that because once you touch that, it's over. Everybody freaks out about it. And so that's the due process thing, right? And it's also the racial thing, right? Because once you step in that issue, once you start talking about something that allows you to categorize people in a certain way, or you're making an assumption, it's so scary to fall down that rabbit hole of what would happen if we start, for example, saying all trans people are violent, right? If you go down that rabbit hole, we're scared of what happens next.
But I'm not sure anybody's saying that. I'm thinking what people are saying is if you've committed 14 crimes, violent and otherwise, maybe you shouldn't be riding the light rail. Maybe you shouldn't be out and about. And this person in particular, this DeCarlos Brown Jr., his own mother was like, this person needs to be involuntarily committed. Like, please get this person off the streets. But then you've got these felon coddling mayors and leaders and prosecutors and everyone that are like, you know what? We can't arrest our way out of a problem. Well, but if you did arrest your way out of the problem, perhaps innocent people wouldn't be dead. So it just goes back to, again, you're more worried about this repeat violent offender being offended than you are about a 23-year-old who gets stabbed to death coming home from her, fast food job.
I don't know why Democrats don't hear that argument, because if they were smart, they would understand that that is the fundamental piece that y'all are upset about. And it goes back to the America First thing, right? It's the underlying piece of everything. And because you're saying, you're more upset about what's going on in other countries than you are about what's going on here. And so I think it would be smart of them to do that. The problem is, so like with this case in particular, this is an interesting one because he obviously was mentally disturbed. So I did some research on the whole thing. And many of the incidents that he had or run-ins with law enforcement, he demonstrated mental illness. And actually they were there on a wellness check in January when he got arrested. Somebody had called in and said that he's not okay. Usually when wellness checks happen, it's because somebody's considered hurting themselves. And they don't know who called it in or what happened, but they got there and then he called 911, even though the cops were there, and said that there was some demon there or something like that. And then they arrested him for making a phony 911 call. He spent the night in jail and the judge let him go the next morning with a written promise that he would come back for a hearing or a mental health evaluation, right? Here's the problem. When Mamdani says things like, we need less cops and more mental health professionals, this is the kind of situation that he means, but it should be them working together. I disagree that it should be less one and more than another. I think it should be cross-referenced because what happens here is this is a person who is sick. And if you keep sending him to jail and getting him out of jail, this does not fix the mental health problem. And so there needs to be sort of a cross-referencing here where people can attack the problem head on rather than just putting people into the cycle of the criminal justice system. Look, when it comes to kids, especially for me, because I worked in child welfare, lock them up and throw away the key. Put them in alligator Alcatraz. People who hurt kids. Like, I have no sympathy for them whatsoever. But when it comes to people who truly are sick and they need help, we're just not solving the problem. I'm not saying that it's even more compassion for them. It's just not solving the problem.
So, but would you agree that it would be better for overall society if you did, after these people have demonstrated a problem, that perhaps they are in custody? If they've committed crimes, because he has, it's always like, well, but it's not going to solve the problem. It might not solve his problem, but it would have solved Iryna Zarutska's problem.
Exactly.
And so it feels like the Democrat narrative really is, yes, we must address the whole person. He's obviously unwell. I get that fully, right? But why is what we should do with him and making sure that, he's as comfortable as possible, why is that more important than keeping him off the street so that he doesn't stab someone to death?
This is where I get into arguments with other Democrats because I am a victim first kind of person, and everybody who works in child welfare is. And once you've seen stuff like that, you can't unsee it. And so you're like, it's preventative at that point. The problem is now that's when you get into the civil rights issues, because if you're engaging in preventative measures to try to keep the American public from being subject to violence, right? That's when, and I know we can get into this. They start using like AI predictive measures to try, like Doge has turned into a surveillance arm of the government, and we could talk about that too. But they start saying like, okay, well, this person of this race and who works at this job is most likely to commit a crime.
Yeah, but I don't think that's what anyone's saying. I think they're saying if you've been arrested, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 times. I don't know if it's so much like, hey, you're this color and you work here. More so it's like you've demonstrated a pattern of you don't give a shit about the law.
Yeah, I think that is 100% what you and conservatives that I trust believe. I've seen many of your episodes. You have never, in my estimation, said anything to that effect ever. That would,
yeah, because I don't know why I've never heard a conservative say that we should just lock people up, based on how they appear, or no, it's like there's a demonstrated pattern. And I would tell you this even about the homeless that have mental health issues. I don't believe in just taking homeless people who've done nothing wrong, broken no laws, and involuntarily committing them.
Yeah.
But if you are doing drugs, that is against the law. If you're shooting up in public, that is against the law. If you're abusing animals on Skid Row, that is against the law. And I do believe you need to be locked up.
I agree.
And I don't really personally care that much more about your civil rights than I do about the safety of the overall community.
I agree.
I don't think you just get to run a roughshod because you've got a mental health issue.
Absolutely, but I think that you are an outlier in this.
What Republican is saying they just want to lock everybody up regardless?
Well, I'll just put it into this context. I've had a couple of debates over the last few weeks, I guess, about whether trans people are violent and whether we should take all guns away from trans people, period. And so people are suggesting that in general. And it sounds like, because I just made the argument, right, that liberals go a little crazy when something like this comes up and assume that they're going to take it away from everyone, right? But it's an actual issue. Conservatives really are standing by that position.
So let's get into that just a little bit, and I don't want to spend our whole time on it.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it's so much that every trans person shouldn't have a gun. I don't believe that.
Yeah.
You can't paint with a broad brush.
Sure.
But I will say this. If somebody is in a place where they are gender dysphoric, right?
Yeah.
And they don't know what they are, and they want to cut off their body parts, and they want to do hormones, and they want to do puberty blockers, and they want to do this, that, and the other. You don't think it's a reasonable question to ask if maybe this person has some disturbances that might be worth taking a look at?
I think that is fair in general. I think that everyone should get a mental health assessment that's under the age of 25 before they get a gun. That's the rule in Japan. I think everybody should.
You think we should all be under mental health evaluation just to get a firearm?
Yes.
So that's completely negating the right to bear arms then?
I think that...
Because that's very arbitrary, right? So to just say that like everyone's going to get a mental health assessment and you don't get one and you don't get one and we've identified an issue with you. Well, liberals think that conservatives who voted for Trump have a mental health issue. I happen to think that a lot of liberals have a mental health issue because they voted for Kamala, right? But I'm not going to take their guns away. And I don't believe in taking guns away from every trans person either. What I'm saying is if you are, and we still don't know the ramifications and the side effects of puberty blockers, hormone treatments, gender mutilation, all these things that they're pumping into their bodies and hormones and this and that and testosterone and fluctuating that. I don't think there's been enough research to determine if those factors contribute to somebody having suicidal ideation, homicidal ideation. Those are things that I'm not saying is a definite, but I think maybe we should take a look at it.
So it sounds like the argument that you're making is it should be fair for somebody who has gender dysphoria. It should be fair for us to assume that they're mentally ill.
Not in all cases, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is interesting because when I was a speechwriter in the legislature, we had to deal with gender affirming care stuff for kids, and I tried to do as much research as I could and deal with it as delicately as possible, and it's difficult. But the issue ended up being that the kids, in my view, are completely separate, right? Like kids should not be subjected to any sort of like genital mutilation, anything like that. But it's also not for me to say. Like that should be a doctor, like a doctor and a
doctor that has a financial stake in getting these kids on.
I don't know why people think doctors have financial stakes. Robert F. Kennedy has way more financial stakes in big pharma and in vaccines and in biotech than any congressperson.
So you don't think that big pharma sees any dollar signs when it comes to kids being, because for the rest of your life, if you gender transition, you are going to be a patient of big pharma. You will have to be on hormones and various other interventions for the rest of your life. You will have multiple surgeries, likely, and then you'll have corrective surgeries, and then you'll have problems and mishaps, and you'll have medication, and you'll have hormones, and you'll have till the end of time.
Right.
And that's why so many people that go through that pipeline end up committing because of how dangerous it is to start going down that path, especially when you're an adolescent and your brain is still forming.
So since I hear you on the kids aspect of it, totally. And I have a separate issue for kids. But since the 1950s, 60s, there were protests from the gay community to get homosexuality out of the DSM because it was classified as a mental illness. And so it's interesting to compare the two, because I think that a lot of liberals want to be on the right side of history. They go, we made a huge mistake. Because a lot of liberals originally were against gay marriage, right? And they thought
like Barack Obama.
Or Clinton, right?
Yeah.
They switched later because they were like...
It was advantageous politically, yeah.
Gross. But it frustrates me because we forget that this was a whole issue prior, right? That in the 1970s, there were protests to get homosexuality taken out of the DSM as a qualifier for mental illness. And so we look at trans now and we go, maybe we don't want to go through that again. Like maybe we don't want to do that whole process of making people prove that they're humans. And that this isn't a mental health condition, it's a condition of being.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a big difference between being gay and saying that you're born in the wrong body and therefore you must change it using medical intervention into such a degree that you are now messing with your biology, you know.
So what's interesting is, though, it's treated in society the same way, right? Because 50 years ago, they would have said, no, those are for sure the same thing. They're both definitely mental health issues.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting.
Yeah, I think that we can progress as a society in certain ways, but the whole trans craze, you know, this has become like in vogue, and it's starting younger and younger.
Yeah.
And there's a lot to be said about it. And I'm glad that you agree that kids shouldn't be making these life-changing decisions. So at least we can agree upon that.
Yeah.
But, you know, back to the overall discussion right now, because crime and the discussion of crime is having a real moment right now, I guess you should say.
And just, I didn't mean to interrupt, just the last thing I want to say about that was now on a certain gentleman's podcast, who shall not be named, they are discussing how SSRIs can make people violent, which there's no evidence of whatsoever. Most people I know are on SSRIs.
Yeah.
And
you don't think that people are maybe overprescribed them, though?
Maybe, for sure, but there's no evidence that makes them violent, and that's the conversation that they're having. So that's the slippery slope, right? That's where it gets to. It's like, okay, if we start saying maybe these people are violent because they take this medication, now there's so much talk about it, and then hate breeds from that. And I know that the hate breeds from that because it comes at me.
Yeah. No, and I don't think... I think there's a difference between saying, no, this is it, and saying, do we need to look at it?
That's fair.
I don't think that there's anything wrong with looking at how young people are perhaps overprescribed.
That's fair.
And how, you know, before it was the ADHD medication. All the kids had to be on Ritalin and Adderall, and it was, everyone's hyperactive, everyone's got ADHD, everyone must be medicated. And now it's, well... I think that we're overprescribing kids who might have general teen anxiety or teen blues, and we're saying that you're depressed, you have anxiety, you must be prescribed something to dull you. And I think that there's a discussion there worth having.
Absolutely.
Now, I don't make that leap to like, you're violent, but I'm like, do we need to look at it?
Yes.
I don't think there's anything wrong with taking a look at that.
Totally agree.
Well, I'm glad we can agree on that.
Me too.
Crime.
Yes,
so,
crime.
Do you think Democrats are, you already kind of touched on this, but overall, the Pritzkers and the Newsoms and the Mayor Brandon Johnsons and all this, do you think that they are getting it right when it comes to their messaging to everyday Americans, Republican, Democrat, Independent, on the crime message?
When it comes to their message, no. But the underlying conclusions that they have, I think, are exactly right. So here's the difference. Democrats just need to admit that they dropped the ball on crime. If they do, they will gain so much credibility back, because it doesn't matter how many crimes happen. It doesn't matter what the statistics are, whether it got lower or higher. Nobody cares. If you feel unsafe, that's all that matters. And I think that Trump understands that and Democrats don't. So they're standing over here with their numbers, and the humans who are around them are like, yeah, but we don't feel safe. We don't care. So they need to just say, we didn't focus on it enough. We should have focused on it more. Sorry, but now I have credibility in saying to you that this is the biggest step that I've seen towards an authoritarian government, period. And you heard how I was reasonable before about a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
But I absolutely 100% believe that sending the National Guard into these 19 different states and like all these steps that they're taking, what that Newsom has pointed out and that Pritzker has pointed out, I think this is the scariest thing that I've seen.
Really? Scarier than people being and mugged and all that?
That is the perfect response, I think. And to that, I would say a nerdy quote, which is the Benjamin Franklin one, which is, if you trade your liberty for security, then you don't deserve either.
So I have a couple questions for you on that. I don't believe that it's in President Trump's heart to send the National Guard for the purposes of being authoritarian and having an army. I think that President Trump, like many common sense folks, sees a problem that's not being addressed. And he says, all right, these governors, these mayors are not addressing the killing fields, as he would put it.
Yes.
What can I do to make these people safer? And if I did it in DC and it's working, could I then go and reinforce the law enforcement in these cities, give them a force multiplier, and help bring down the crime in these cities and show these constituents that they can, in fact, be safe? Because how do you show people that it's not inevitable that you have to be in a crime-ridden city when you've got governors and mayors that say, what Pritzker said last week, big cities have crime?
That sucked. Like that was a terrible choice for him to say that.
So what do Democrats want to do to address crime?
It would be nice if we could fund the police officers much more than we do. We could use a lot more police. I think we could definitely use a lot more local police. Here's the thing, though. I think that your fundamental issue there is that you trust Trump. Because if you don't trust Trump and you couple the action that he's taking, sending in the National Guard, with the fact that he's talking about silencing media companies and controlling Wikipedia and discrediting institutions like the DOJ and the FBI and the CDC, how DOJ is turned into a surveillance arm. Like, when you couple it with all of those pieces, it becomes like you're just checking everything off the authoritarian checklist. And if you're an outside person who's not attached to any piece of this, and you take a look at all of those elements, the only way you can deny it is if you trust him. And that is disturbing to me.
So should we trust Democrats? And the reason I ask this is because, during COVID, Democrats were very overzealous about policing COVID restrictions. And I called that just direct tyranny. I thought, to me, that was the most, at least in my lifetime, the most direct example of authoritarianism I have ever seen in my life in America was during COVID, when Newsom sent the Coast Guard out to get a paddleboarder in Malibu because he was breaking COVID restrictions. So I'm sorry, Democrats don't have a whole lot of credibility when you cry about President Trump being an authoritarian and sending in the National Guard, when these governors and these mayors during COVID, even here in Nashville, were sending out police to arrest people, homeowners who had more than 8 people in their home. So you don't have a lot of credibility when you warn me about authoritarianism because President Trump wants to crack down on crime.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I started this conversation, is that the Democrats don't have the credibility to be able to say this and to have people listen, which is one of the reasons why I go on right-wing media, is because I'm trying to gain some credibility back for this side, because I think that you can be reasonable about these things, and perhaps maybe then people will believe me when I say that this authoritarian thing is happening.
So I disagree with you on that point. It should also be noted that President Trump hasn't sent the National Guard, and he repeated numerous times over the last 2 weeks, I want to be invited. I want this governor
he has to be invited, or he's not allowed.
So I want the governor to call me. And so basically he's saying, like, I want to help you. Give me a call and let's crack down on crime. But you know, and I know, that these governors and these mayors will never do that, because if they partner with President Trump, first of all, Democrats have decided that partnering with President Trump is political.
That's true.
Okay. But on the second hand, I think the underlying thing here is these governors and these mayors know crime's a problem, but they are terrified if they partner with President Trump, they send in reinforcements and crime goes down. They look dumb as hell. And they're more worried about that than they are about their constituents. Tell me I'm wrong on that assessment.
You're not. And I think that Bowser almost got it right, because she could have said, stay and help. You're allowed to here. Right? Because it's DC. The rules are different. Stay and help. I'm asking you to be here because now you can come in under Title 10 and Title 32. And then she could have said, and then pivot, right? Pivot to what you want to do. But then her pivot was a little too quiet. And so you only heard one message or the other. Whichever side wanted to hear whichever message. But I think that take this point, for example. Did you know that the official directive from the White House for these National Guardsmen when they go into these 19 different cities is to do clerical work? That the official statement from the White House is that sending in the National Guard has nothing to do, it's unrelated to Trump's crackdown on crime. That is the official statement from the White House, and no one is talking about it.
What clerical work?
Like, it's specifically for ICE, working like fingerprinting and doing filing. That is the official directive of...
Because that's what would be legal to reinforce federal law enforcement.
And why would it be illegal in the first place?
Why would it be illegal? Well, they're trying to find ways in which they can crack down on crime and use federal resources as a force multiplier within their jurisdiction and constitutional authority.
You think it's a good use of the National Guard to have them doing clerical work?
If they can provide a force multiplier for federal agents that are allowed to be there in these sanctuary cities... I see no problem with that.
It's being packaged and sold to Americans as the National Guard is keeping people safe. If they're doing clerical work, that's not keeping people safe. They're just standing there and showing force. That's what they're doing.
Here's my question for you. If you were somewhere, if you're in Chicago, on the south side of Chicago, and it's 11:30 at night, and you look up and you see a National Guard soldier, do you feel safer or less safe?
I feel safer because I am the exact kind of person that they're protecting.
Yeah. So you're insinuating that our American National Guard men and women are what, racist?
No, I am saying that it is, when you don't have local police, it makes people in the community feel unsafe. But I don't generally feel unsafe. I've never had a reason to feel unsafe.
You wouldn't feel unsafe in the south side of Chicago at 11:30 p.m.?
No, I meant with a National Guardsman standing there.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So you're telling me that if you're a black man who's in the south side of Chicago at 11:30 and you are committing no crime and you look up and you see a National Guard soldier, you're telling me that that young man would have to be worried for his life?
Yes.
Because of the National Guard. You're telling me why? Then that tells me that you think that our National Guard's men and women are racist.
No, I think that police in general, actually, it's different from National Guard, because policemen are, and the local communities are the ones that develop relationships with these people. I think that the image gets confused in their minds, but it's just a show of force, right? And when black males have been subjected to that, there's been extra violence, disproportionate amount of violence that's happened to them.
You don't concede that it's actually black men who are killing each other?
I think that there's a reason that people don't add to that. There's black men are killing each other because they are in situations of poverty, because they are desperate in these communities, and it's not black men at large, right? It's people in poverty, and there's more people of color that are in poverty. So that's why they end up in gangs and on drugs, because they're desperate. It's a money issue.
Yeah. But giving them money isn't going to solve the problem. There are a lot of people that are in gangs make a pretty tidy sum dealing drugs or doing whatever they have to do, right? I don't disagree with you that there's a fundamental social aspect here and cultural aspect, and I think fatherlessness is a huge problem, and I think that a lot of these things are huge problems, right?
Yes.
I think that, in fact, things like Section 8 and whatever, I think that they contribute to those factors. We probably disagree on that. But what I'm saying is, I've never been anywhere, and most law-abiding people, regardless of color, unless they've been brainwashed to hate law enforcement and the military, would feel safer in an unsafe environment if they saw a National Guardsman there.
I don't think it's brainwashing when the statistics are demonstrating otherwise. It's just the truth that there's a disproportionate amount of violence against black men who aren't committing crimes.
Okay. So this kind of goes back to, again, why I don't believe Democrats when you say, well, we just need more police officers. Well, now you're willing to concede that point, but not really, because your narrative is still that the police force, the National Guard, law enforcement in general is racist.
No, that is not what I'm saying. I'm saying that because there have been so many incidents.
When has the National Guard done anything to black men?
I was saying of the police, not the National Guard.
You told me you wanted more police. Now you're saying you don't because they're racist.
I want more local police, not National Guardsmen. No one is, I'm not saying any branch of people is racist.
You're telling me that if you were in the south side of Chicago at 11:30 at night and you, as a black man, looked up and saw a police officer, you'd feel better than seeing a National Guardsman?
I can't speak for a black man.
But you tried to.
I did.
You tried to 5 minutes ago.
I did, but I'm just going off of the statistics and the people that I've spoken to, and it's not for me to say.
Yeah.
But
I think it's really dangerous to echo to black people in general that law enforcement is the enemy.
I don't believe that in general, and actually I was way in the outliers. So in Atlanta, they wanted to open a police training center.
Yeah.
And a judge that I was having dinner with, like with all these people around, was like, Madeline, what do you think of that? Because, like, you know, when you do politics, people are like, oh, yes, say a controversial opinion.
Yeah.
I was like, I think it's a great idea. If you are upset about the fact that there's a disproportionate amount of violence against people of color, why not have more training? I don't understand. Like, that's the whole point, is train them in a way that's more, you know, diversity focused. And he was like, oh, that's nice. That's a hot take, because nobody else thought that. They, just the association with police exploded. Just the notion of supporting or backing the blue in any way exploded.
So you understand why then, when you say everything Trump doing bad, authoritarian, awful, bad, but I say, what can Democrats do to solve this problem? And you said, well, we need more police officers.
Yes.
Okay. So you're willing to say that you want more police officers, but you also just told me that all the Democrats you're around actually don't back the blue and probably don't want more police officers around.
I think that they need to come around to that. I think that.
Why is it that they need to come around to that? Do you realize how sick in the head that sounds for Democrats to take the official position of having less police? We're right back to 2020 and defund the police. Democrats have been running away from that since they realized it was politically inconvenient, but deep down they still believe it, and you know it.
I know.
And that's sick.
I've never been in that camp. Like I said, I'm not a soft-on-crime liberal, because I believe in protecting people.
Why are liberals soft on crime? Like, what is the goal?
Okay, so the diversion programs that exist in the world do a really good job.
Sure?
But they're not for violent offenders. They're for first-time offenders and for younger people. And they do a phenomenal job.
You mean like the ones doing the carjackings in D.C.? Those young little rascals?
Listen, do you think that after young man Big Balls got into this carjacking situation, that Donald Trump just woke up one morning and went, I think I'm going to send in the National Guard today? Of course not. This has been planned for a very long time. He didn't just wake up one day and go, I think the National Guard's a good idea.
No, I think he was in D.C. and he looked around and I said, wow, this is what can I do to make it better?
I think that is the most reasonable perspective. The trick for this always is to convince the citizens to hand their rights over. And it's the perfect catch-22.
Like COVID, when we handed our rights over. We were subject to the tyranny of Democrats.
It's the perfect catch-22, because now Democrats look like they like crime if they don't want to help, and he gets welcomed in. Please, armed guards, come into our city.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
President Trump's got about 3 years left, right? Mm-hmm. What do you think is the conspiracy here? That he wants to clean up America so that he can take it over?
Thank you very much for asking, because I would love to tell you. So remember how much I hate JD Vance?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, a lot of people are talking about Palantir now and Peter Thiel, which I had mentioned before. That's a lot more in the news now, and I'm so glad about it because it's very scary. Now Doge, right, the head of Doge since Elon Musk left, is a lady that actually Obama gave an award to because she came up with electronic medical records program software that would allow rural hospitals to transfer medical records to city ones so that people could, you know, be treated better. That lady is the head of Doge now. And what they're doing now is combining data from HHS, the IRS, and DHS in order to be able to surveil Americans. You can check it. It's Reuters Ipsos did a huge study on it.
Surveil what? What do they want?
Americans. They want to be able to predict whether or not we can do crime. It's with Palantir, and they're partnering with Peter Thiel to do this. They're using the software that Peter Thiel built in this Doge program to combine all the data. And a lot of Palantir employees quit because they knew that our privacy rights were being taken away by combining all of this data without our consent.
So you think this is President Trump and his crime crackdown is all part of a big conspiracy to do what?
To institute an authoritarian regime.
Okay, so you think that he wants to be a dictator?
Yes.
Right. Do you realize how crazy that sounds?
Yes.
Okay, so you realize that when President Trump says, I want people, this man is a billionaire. He could go sit in Mar-a-Lago and golf every day and live his life. And in 3 years, it's probably what he's going to do. But to say, actually, President Trump does not care about keeping you safe, even though that's what he's run on for the last 10 years. And that's what he has been doing in D.C. through federal law enforcement and immigration crackdown, blah, blah, blah. But what he really wants is to be the dictator for the rest of his life.
Trump has doubled his wealth, or almost tripled it, since he's became president this term. So there are lots of side tangential benefits besides the power.
You're right. You guys have tried to jail him so many times, tried to assassinate him twice, but really what this is
We did not. I did not. Nobody wants him assassinated. AOC was the first person to stand up and go.
Isn't that kind of weird, though, that 2 weeks ago Tim Walz was laughing about the
that was not
Trump
cool.
assassination hoax?
That was not cool.
Or you've got Joy Reid saying that the first one wasn't actually real, that was fake.
Yeah, that's unacceptable. We can't.
You see why we think that?
Yes,
you know,
it's the perfect trap. It's the perfect trap.
Is it a trap, or is it just liberals being liberals and we're just noting it?
Their messaging is so good, y'all's messaging, because now
it's just the truth, Madeline. Like,
but think about it. Think about it like this: if you're an alien from outer space and you have no emotional attachment to the situation, and somebody made you a checklist of all the things that an authoritarian regime would do to try to convince the people to, because the people want the authoritarian regime, right? It happens in history. Mussolini in Italy, we got China, Russia. People, they welcome him, right? Whoever the strong man is. They say, please come and help us because this is the crime is too much, right? It's usually the crime problem or the immigrants are too much. That's how it happens. And if you go down the list, including the surveillance stuff, right, this is exactly how it happens.
Yeah. Well, again, I would just go back to you guys wanted people to show their vaccine papers before they could go to work.
Does that make this any less scary, though?
Yeah, because you guys have no credibility when you're crying about authoritarianism and democracy with all the stuff that not you particularly, but your party has pulled. With trying to jail President Trump numerous times, right?
I know.
Shutting down dissent on the Hunter Biden laptop and COVID commentary personally happened to me by the Biden White House. The COVID tyranny in general, right? The censorship that conservatives have experienced way back from the IRS targeting conservatives to social media companies targeting conservatives at the behest of the Biden administration. The credibility that Democrats have when you guys scream about Trump is a dictator. You realize where we're like, yeah, but...
So I have literally dedicated the last year of my life to solving that credibility problem. Because I just wanted to be one voice that goes, men shouldn't be in women's sports, right? Like saying reasonable things to where maybe someone will believe me when I make this reasonable argument about this is exactly how this happens. And with the COVID thing, I will address it because you brought it up a couple of times. The issue there was censorship because, and I'm not justifying it, this is just an assessment, It was the misinformation issue, right? People were dying, and the Biden administration wanted people to get the vaccine so that they wouldn't die, and that they wouldn't be convinced that they shouldn't get it by crazies who were posting this, that, and everything else with whatever conspiracy theory they had, whether it was true or not. And
or when the Biden administration, the CDC, Rachel Maddow, when they came out and said that the vaccine prevents infection and spread, lies like that, misinformation like that, or that there are no vaccine side effects and it doesn't cause myocarditis in especially young men, misinformation like that, trying to quell that. That whole thing that is happening to real people experiencing real vax side effects, we just want them to shut up and get the vaccine.
I don't know if y'all have any credibility in talking about the CDC when Robert Kennedy just appointed a biotech investor who is not a doctor to be the head of the CDC. That's a good idea? Now we're going to trust the CDC? That's insane, Tomi. That's crazy.
In your perspective, it's insane. In my perspective...
He's a biotech investor. He makes money off of pharma.
Well, I don't know the specifics on that, and I'm no friend of Big Pharma. I'll tell
I
you
know
this,
that.
and I don't think RFKG, I don't think we could make that assessment that he is, but I'll tell you this. I do know Marty McCary personally, all right? I think he's fantastic, and I think he's going to do a fantastic job, and he is, by all accounts, very qualified to do what he does. So there's that.
I would like a doctor to be the head of the CDC.
Okay.
I mean, I don't think
Like
that's...
Dr. Fauci?
Dr. Fauci is a hero.
Oh.
We heard groans from the side back here. Dr. Fauci is a hero. The
Okay.
comments are coming, y'all. The
There
comments
we
are
go.
coming.
Dr. Fauci's a hero.
Yep, he solved a big portion of the AIDS crisis. And what he did with the vaccine was extraordinary. He saved. So let me give you this story. My husband's parents are both in their 70s. They both were in the hospital at the very beginning of COVID in 2020. And no one in their community wore masks. No one in the hospital wore masks. They didn't take it seriously, and they both almost died. They got the vaccines eventually because my husband begged them to, and everybody's second generation begged this whole older generation who saw ads on Facebook about how it was bad for them. So many people in their community died that didn't get the vaccine. So many. And Operation Warp Speed was extraordinary. Extraordinary. Again, I'm not one of those liberals that doesn't think Trump should get credit for things that he does well.
Yeah. How many boosters have you gotten?
2.
Okay. Have you gotten COVID?
Yes.
Okay. You want to know how many vaccines I've gotten for COVID? Exactly. You want to know how many times I've gotten COVID? 0.
Okay,
Not
that's
one.
a story.
Not one. So if you gave your dog 5 rabies vaccines in a year and the damn thing still got rabies, wouldn't you look at it a little sideways?
There's a direct proportional correlation between deaths and getting the vaccine, right?
Yeah.
I
agree.
You get the vaccine.
There is a direct correlation
You get the vaccine,
between getting
deaths
the
from
vaccine
COVID
and
go
deaths.
down. You get the vaccine, deaths go
People
down.
that are 70-something years old that have comorbidities should absolutely consider getting a COVID vaccine. Me, as I sit here as a young 30-something-year-old, hell to the no, no. And children who have such a low, almost no mortality rate from COVID, for damn sure, in my opinion, should not be getting jab.
The point was so that they didn't go see their grandparents and spread it, right? It wasn't about them. It was about spreading it.
Okay, but the vaccine does not prevent infection or spread. It just makes your symptoms less. It makes you less likely to die. It does not make you less likely to give it to somebody else.
It makes you not. It makes it last a less amount of. Oh, it makes it last a shorter amount of time.
Then why would it matter if the damn kids got it to go see their grandparents? It doesn't prevent infection or spread. You know this.
Listen, the vaccine saved so many lives, and to characterize Fauci as horribly
the vaccine. Here's the deal. The vaccine also ruined a lot of lives, and I wish that you could see that.
How many?
Well, I'll tell you this. The people that had to choose between their employment and getting a jab that they didn't want, yeah, kind of ruined their lives. The kids that had to choose between getting a vaccine that they didn't want and going to school, yeah, kind of ruined their lives. The people that have myocarditis and other vaccine side effects and vaccine injuries that have never been acknowledged and probably will never be acknowledged, yeah, they were hurt by that vaccine.
So you think that if people got the vaccine, that it wasn't going to prevent the spread of it, that people will just have latent COVID, no symptoms, and will continue to go on about their day.
The vaccine did not prevent infection or spread. It helped you, if you did get COVID, it helped lessen the severity of your case. And for those that are 70 years old, that's probably a good road. For people who are healthy, and especially healthy, young, and active, no, I don't see a realm in which a vaccine that doesn't prevent infection or spread would be helpful to you.
I think it prevents spread if it lasts a shorter amount of time.
Okay.
Right? You boost the immune system. The person has 3 days of COVID versus 3 weeks. That's a big difference in opportunity to spread.
Gotcha.
But
Okay.
I hear your point.
Yeah. We'll never agree on that one because I'm like pretty zealous on that.
I hear you. Yeah, that was a good point.
Yeah.
You got me on that one.
Well, you think Fauci's a hero, so we have got to do some work there. But I want to play, speaking of messaging that maybe has gone awry, I want to play one of my favorites, Jasmine Crockett. Let's take a listen.
I want to be clear that, like, law enforcement isn't to prevent crime. Law enforcement solves crime, okay? That is what they're supposed to do. They are supposed to solve crimes, not necessarily prevent them from happening, per se.
Okay. Do you think that that was a scholarly assessment of law enforcement and their role and responsibility?
Here's what I think she was thinking, because as a lawyer, I think she's referring to the notion that you can't hold police responsible if they don't respond to a crime being committed and the person gets hurt or injured or dies. So there's a lot of cases where people try to go to trial to hold law enforcement responsible. Like if a woman calls police 8 different times and they don't come to her house to help her, and then her boyfriend ends up killing her in a domestic violence incident.
So you think she was sticking up for police officers in that assessment?
No. What I'm saying is I think in her brain as a lawyer, she was going...
In her brain as a moron.
In her brain as a lawyer, she was going... They are not held accountable for when they don't respond to something.
Bull. You know exactly what she was saying. What she was saying is we don't need more law enforcement officers because they don't prevent crime, so having more is not going to solve our crime crisis. You know that's exactly what she meant.
I knew immediately what she meant because my brain went there too. I don't agree, but my brain went there. I know why she thinks that, and it's because that's how the law handles it.
You really think that was her assessment there? Was like, well, but in the court of law, if you don't show up to a call, you think that's what she was thinking?
Yes, because that's how we think.
You think like Jasmine Crockett.
I love Jasmine Crockett. I think...
Okay, so you love Jasmine Crockett and Dr. Fauci.
Yes, I'm a liberal, Tomi.
You love Kamala?
She's nice.
See? There you go.
But I think Gavin Newsom's a haircut, and Wes Moore annoys the heck out of me.
Yeah. I think they're all awful. But the fact that you love Jasmine Crockett, to me, you think she's doing your side favors when she speaks?
No.
But you love her.
She says what I want to say, but I don't think that I should.
When she sits there and she says, Governor Hot Wheels is a hot mess.
I'm not saying everything she says. I disagree with that. That was a fun impression, though, that you just did.
Yeah.
But I don't agree with everything that she says. But I love when she took down Marjorie Taylor Greene. That was great.
So you think that was great when she called her a butch bitch with a bad body?
She had just dissed her eyelashes 1 second ago.
Yeah, but I'm not standing up for Marjorie Taylor Greene. I'm not saying that's the epitome of my party. I'm not saying I love her. You're saying that you love Jasmine Crockett.
Let me be clear. I don't think any of them are the epitome of our party.
Who is?
I love Pete Buttigieg.
Why do you think he polls so bad with men?
Why do you think he polls so bad with men?
I could tell you. I think you know. Why do you think? It's not just Republican men. He doesn't poll well with black men. He doesn't poll well with Democrat men.
I'll give you my jury consultant answer. It's because he has a soft voice and he has a soft presence. I think that
that's one way to put it.
I know a couple of people that I've worked with in politics who are big, tall dudes who have booming voices, or that can have booming voices, but their presence is small. Mm-hmm. And I think you need a big, giant presence in order to be able to be the president of the United States. I think he's brilliant.
That's it?
Yeah.
You think that's why black voters don't like him? Because he's got a small presence?
Yes.
Okay. Do you think your party has a masculinity problem?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you see anybody in your party that you feel like reads masculine?
That's a great question.
That's a male.
Rude. I think Wes Moore reads as masculine. Pritzker reads as masculine.
Pritzker reads as masculine to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
In what way?
He's got dad vibes.
You think?
Yeah.
Really?
And Wes Moore has
Well, Wes Moore looks like a man, so at least there's that.
JB Pritzker doesn't look like a man.
I wouldn't say that looks like the epitome of masculinity. No.
He's still a dude.
Yeah, I do think you think he reads as masculine?
Versus feminine, sure.
Okay. So you think that that's the kind of guy that like men can get behind and they're going to switch over from being Trump supporters to Pritzker supporters?
I don't think that you switch your party affiliation based on the level of masculinity that someone has.
I think it matters to young men. I think that they want a leader who is masculine if it's a man, definitive, decisive, and comes across as authoritative and strong.
So you and I are actually saying the same thing, but we're using different words because I'm saying big presence and you're saying masculinity.
Yeah. I think big presence, and I think you can be a woman and have a big presence as well. And we discussed off camera how there are so many strong conservative women who have very large presence, and they happen to be in the Trump administration.
Absolutely, and I think that's awesome. And I think that liberals who say that Trump doesn't like women are wrong. I think that they're just wrong, and that he doesn't like gay people or black people. Scott Bessent is the Treasury Secretary, and Jeanine Pirro is the AG in DC. So
yeah,
I mean, it's a bad argument.
I agree with you on that. Let's talk about our last fun topic. We'll segue perfect into this. The NBC poll of Gen Z life success barometers, all right? Men who backed Donald Trump in 2024 rated having children at the top. Women who backed Kamala Harris rated it second to last. But I would also add, women who voted for Trump also did not score having children at the top of their list. So I want your assessment as a liberal woman. What do you think of those stats?
So I'd love to tell you my assessment first as a jury consultant because I deal with polls like this all the time. So the stuff that's at the very top and at the very bottom are always going to be the thing that the person who's being polled wants you to see about them. That's the thing that they want to show you. The truth usually lies in the middle, right? Because they're trying to make a statement with their top one and their bottom one. So with the women here who are being polled, right, and it makes sense because the liberal message, right, is you don't need to be married and have children in order to be successful. Okay. And so they're making a statement by putting that lower on their list. I think that's what's evident there.
So what about the women who voted for Trump, who also ranked having children lower on the list?
I thought that was men who voted for Trump on the list.
And women who voted, men who voted for Trump ranked it top, having children.
Right.
Women who voted for Trump also did not list having children at the top of their list. So whereas women who voted for Harris ranked it lower, women who voted for Trump also ranked it lower than men who voted for Trump.
Yeah. So I think that that's because of the narrative, whether it's liberal or not, and that women need to have kids and be married to be successful. And studies show that when you are being polled, you, as the person who's being polled, want to demonstrate the opposite, that you're strong enough to say the opposite of what you think they want you to say, if that makes sense.
So you think that women, liberal and conservative, actually prioritize having children higher than what this study suggests?
Yes, I do. I think that's the exact point I'm making. Thank you for clarifying that, because I think that what people do in polls is they're trying to talk to you. Their answer is trying to prove a point.
Okay. So as far as the men though, that's actually pretty surprising to me that men who voted for Trump ranked having children at the top of their list.
Yeah. What do you think about that?
I think that's a great sign, honestly. I do, because I think for so long and for so many generations, so many women have been wrestling with trying to get the person that they're with to want to have a family and kids and have a, tradition and whatever. I think that for a long time was like a struggle where women wanted to have the kids, women wanted to get married, and men wanted to be Peter Pan. Yes. So this reversal is actually, to me, a positive sign. How do you read it?
Yeah, I think that's great, actually. But also, if you're going off of the theory that I just posited, these men want the interviewer to know that that's what they care about. that they want to project the image of wanting to be married and have kids.
What do you think they actually want?
It could be that, or it could be whatever's in the middle there. What I thought was super interesting, though, is that people prioritized very low not having debt and buying a house. They pulled that very, very low. And it's funny because like my stepdad, who I think is like one of the most extraordinary humans on the planet, has like made sure his whole life that he had no debt and that he had a house and his kids had houses. Like that was numero uno for him his whole life. So it's just interesting to see how that's changed through the generations.
Well, and I think that it definitely has changed generationally, because I think a lot of young people find buying a home to be kind of unattainable.
Yeah.
And they don't really see a problem with renting or, whatever they have to do. I think they would much rather get their finances in order and have independence, have a great job, all those things. I think those are all like good things. I don't think there's anything on the list that I would say is a bad thing.
I was super surprised though, actually, that male Trump supporters didn't prioritize higher being grounded spiritually. I assumed that would be much higher.
Yeah. I'm not sure necessarily why that is. I think for some people, when you say being grounded spiritually, I think that means different things to different people.
They hear like woo-woo?
Yes.
Okay. So then actually on the liberal side, it should have been higher, I think.
Yeah, but they also don't want to give the appearance that they care about religion at all.
So they heard it was low on both. So they heard religion. One side heard religion, and the other side heard woo woo, which is polling is difficult. But I think overall, the truths that we saw there are super demonstrative of what the values are of the culture.
Right.
And I think that's really interesting.
Well, all of it spells bad news for Democrats in my assessment.
Why?
But, because I didn't see at the top of anybody's list LGBTQ, BLM, Antifa, coddling thugs and felons.
Okay. BLM and Antifa hate Democrats. They have never been a part of the Democratic Party. They've never been endorsed by the Democratic Party. It is just the go-to for right-wing media to say, look, they're violent. They hate the Democratic Party.
Okay.
So, I mean, I don't know.
That's funny because the Democrat Party sure loves them.
What? No, they
You don't. Think
don't.
the Democrat Party loves BLM?
No.
Were you around in 2020? Did you take a hiatus?
How many suburban moms who were liberals did you see at a BLM protest?
A lot. A lot.
The ones that were violent?
I don't know if you could characterize that as violent or not. Who were the violent ones?
I only saw one violent protest because I watched liberal
Who
news
were
at
they?
the time. They were young people.
Okay.
Of all colors and races and genders and everything.
Okay.
I'm just saying, I think that the Democrats actually have an opportunity here to improve and to have those values higher on people's lists if they would just gain some credibility back.
Well, best of luck in that endeavor.
I am sincerely trying.
The last thing I actually just have to ask you, because I think it's interesting and I want your take on it.
Thank you.
Would you consider Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear to be a moderate?
No.
You don't think he's a moderate?
No.
So being the governor of kind of a red state, you don't think that reads as moderate or?
I think that nobody trusts that list of dudes that people have put together that are like the governors, like Westmore, Pritzker. Nobody on the right trusts that that those governors are looking out for them. And I think that the way that I would define a moderate is somebody who can convince a conservative that they're looking out for them.
Okay. So is there anybody in your party that you think fits that bill? Okay, so you don't have anybody. I'm going to tell you about Andy Beshear and why I think that your party is royally effed. So there was a fundraiser a few weeks back, a Hakeem Jeffries fundraiser in California.
He's not my favorite.
Andy Beshear was speaking. And by Axios reporting, the biggest applause line of that fundraiser that was in front of Democrats, obviously very invested Democrats, right? The biggest applause line was when Governor Andy Beshear of Kentucky talked about vetoing a anti-trans bill. That was the biggest applause line of the fundraiser, was him, again, bucking the us that want to protect kids and women's sports And that anti-trans bill in Kentucky would just keep them from mutilating children and keep the men out of the women's spaces, right? And that was your biggest applause line for somebody who is billed in a lot of circles as a moderate Democrat, right?
Yeah.
But the Democrat Party still cheers loudest for the LGBTQ and the woke. So as much as Democrats say that they don't necessarily want to be in the woke camp, every other indication would suggest to me that they are still very much entitled to the woke narrative.
So do you think that the woke narrative was what cost Democrats the election?
Yes.
I think it was immigration.
Well, that's part of the woke to me. That's also within woke. When you're crying for Kilmar Abrego Garcia, that's a woke characteristic to me. When you're crying for the men that want to take over women's sports, that's a woke characteristic to me.
Those are two different things.
It all fits in the same bucket.
No, it doesn't. One is the law and one is not.
Okay. So you think Democrats are crying for Kilmar Abrego Garcia? We could have a whole nother discussion, but you don't think that they just look at every illegal alien and they'd stand up for every frickin' one of them?
No, I don't.
Name one that they haven't.
That's impossible. I mean,
have they ever cheered when a violent illegal alien offender was removed from a community? Have you ever seen a Democrat cheer for that and say, good job?
So this goes all the way back around to the beginning of our conversation, which is Democrats have not done enough to compliment America, right? Or to stand up for America to where when they criticize it, the conservatives will believe them.
Yeah, exactly. Because maybe they just don't love America.
But that's the thing, they do. Because here's the thing. America's foundation is on freedom. When I was in the legislature, I begged the Democrats to have a breakfast that was called the Hope and Faith breakfast when they had the Republicans had the Faith and Freedom breakfast. I was like, do a Hope and Liberty breakfast, because those are things that we still stand for. We still care about those things.
Did they end up having that breakfast?
No.
Okay, because you made my point. So you might love America.
I'm not disagreeing with you.
But your party seemingly does not.
That's not true.
Then why do you have such a hard time convincing them to do basic stuff?
Because they are stuck in the messaging of the past. Here's why. Because the way that the Democratic Party works is they get money to advertise to their base so they can get more money and then advertise back to the base. Sorry, microphone.
Yeah.
That's what they do. And that system is what has been perpetuated for years. And we young folks who were trying to help out will not be listened to. We are begging for them to listen to us. So it's just old structures. But that doesn't mean that people still don't care about freedom, that they don't still care about the fact that we have due process. The reason why people are, for the thing that drives me crazy about due process is it is the process that is due, right? There's no extra or additional due process. It is the amount that is due.
Yeah. But do you see where it might be a messaging calamity for y'all when you cry so much about due process for every illegal alien and you cheer not once when a criminal, violent, illegal alien is deported from this country?
Yes, I do see that. And that is so frustrating to me because I truly am afraid of what's going on with the crime crackdown.
Okay.
I think that we are in desperate need of proof that we love this country. Desperate need. Mm-hmm. And it should be easy. Keep pushing the freedom thing. That's what Democrats want anyways, right? We believe that everybody should have food to eat and a bed to sleep in and a house to live in so that they can pursue happiness. That's freedom. Run on that, right? Run on that stuff. It sucks so much that they won't just put a label on it that people can get behind.
Yeah. Well, best of luck to you on that endeavor.
I didn't move you at all on the authoritarian thing.
Not even a little bit. Not even a little bit. But you put in a good effort.
Okay. I'm going to keep trying. I'm literally never going to stop trying.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you being sensible on some things and also bad crazy on others. But
thank you.
You probably think the same about me.
I don't think you're crazy. I think all of your opinions were grounded, which is why this is so difficult for me to try to convince people of things. Yeah. Because everything that you said made sense, but it was set up that way so that it would be so easy for Trump to convince people that this is necessary and needed.
It's just the conspiracy, like you're losing me on this big conspiracy that President Trump wants to do this, that, and the other. That's hard for me to believe. And again, when you talk about credibility, when you try to lock up your political opponent and you try to run somebody initially who's cognitively a vegetable and then replace him at the last minute.
Lock her up is not locking up your opponent? lock her up,
Lock
or
her
going,
up.
going after
Hillary
John
did-
Bolton, or none of that is going against your political enemies?
Well, we don't know about the John Bolton thing yet, so wait for that to play out. If it is purely political, then I would be against it, and many conservatives have echoed that sentiment. I will say this, saying lock her up about Hillary and her emails and Benghazi and all of that, that's also quite different than we're going to assemble some cockamamie stuff in New York to try to go after him for this, and then in Georgia we're going to do this, and we're going to try to put, and then, so
No, you're right.
this is a big difference.
So I still think you're sensible. I don't think you're crazy. This is why this is a wall that I cannot seem to get past, but I'm just going to keep trying.
There's a lot of credibility issues. We didn't even get into the fact that you guys tried to convince us for 4+ years that the vegetable was in charge. We'll get to that next time. You guys have a lot of answering to do on that one. Good luck. I wish we could go longer, but that's going to do it for this Liberal Tuesday Super Edition episode of Tomi Lahren is Fearless. Tune in live tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern. Catch full episodes on Fox Nation and Outkick. Also the YouTube channel at Tomi Lahren is Fearless. From Nashville, God bless and take care. Hey, thanks for watching. For more of my hottest takes, must-see conversations, and of course, my final thoughts, click right here. And don't forget to subscribe. Just click right here so you never miss a beat. I will be here every weekday, and I hope you'll join me.